guys, welcome back to my channel. I want to talk about my C-section today, and I kind of want to make it more of like a little story time, just tell you about my experience and beginning to end, like how it went, and just share for anyone who is anticipating an upcoming C-section, or even just someone who is having a baby and is doing a little bit of research about C-sections or any kind of birth. I have one child and he was a C-section, scheduled C-section. So I'm going to talk about why I had it, how it went, you know, my thoughts, my experience, my postpartum, basically from A to Z, what my experience was. And hopefully you can learn something from it, or reduce some fears, just gain some knowledge about the actual surgery and experience, or just try to relate to another mom, and hopefully come up with a story of your own. But I had a pretty positive experience. I learned a lot, and hopefully this will help you. So if anything, it's a story, and I'm gonna talk about all the little details. I haven't really thought about what I'm gonna say, but it was 7.5 months ago, so it's still fresh on my brain, and it's my only baby. So it's my only birth experience as of right now. So anyways, here's how it went. So I got pregnant and found out I was having a little boy, and I was not nervous for childbirth. I think my whole life I was a little nervous about it, and I thought, oh my God, you know, you get pregnant and then the anxiety of the baby coming out is huge for everybody. They feel that way. So of course I felt that way. But once I got pregnant, that went away, and I was just in go mode. I'm like, this is what I have to do. This is how I have to stay healthy, and he's gonna come out and it's gonna be great. And I'm gonna enjoy this, because I can ruin it if I just surround it with fear and anxiety. There's so much to be unknown, so much, that I felt that I did not want to impose those emotions on my baby. And I felt like what I was thinking in my head was going to him. I had a friend who had 2 very happy children, and I remember her saying to me when she was pregnant that she controlled her emotions and she was happy. And it just stuck with me that I had to stay on top of my brain when I was pregnant, because my baby could feel that. And I stayed as active as I could, working and living my life. And so I felt like the energy that was in the room that he was going to be born into, he would feel. I mean, of course, we're human beings. Like, we feel energy. So he would know, and he would feel that energy before he even came out and when he got there. So I wanted that environment to be a certain way. I had a picture in my head. I wanted it to be calm and dim and happy. And I wanted my birth to be a joyous thing and as calm as possible. So I did a lot of research, and I was studying hypnobirthing, and I wanted this to be an ecstatic experience, honestly. And I chose a hospital and a birthing center that was focused around that. And there was a lot of things that I had wanted to do for my labor and delivery. But anyways, I went to my 20-week appointment. We found out the gender, and I also found out the location of my placenta. So if you're pregnant, you may have already had an ultrasound, and you may or may not know this, but if you're not pregnant or you've never had a baby, your placenta attaches to the side of your uterus in some position. And once it's there, it's grown into the side of your uterus. It doesn't move per se, like float around. But at 20 weeks, you're not that big. So, you know, your uterus went from the size of maybe like a clementine or an orange about 20 weeks. I'm trying to remember. It was maybe about this big, maybe like a cantaloupe or something. So it's not super big. And then by the end, you know, it's a full-on watermelon, and you can have an 8 or 9 or 10 pound baby in there. It could be huge. But from 5 months or 20 weeks to 40 weeks or 41 weeks, there's a lot of growth that happens. So when you go in for your 20-week appointment and they discover and tell you on the ultrasound the location of your placenta and where it's attached, there's a long time and a lot of expanding and growing that can happen where your placenta will shift in perspective with your, you know, your insides, your organs, your belly, your cervix, all that stuff. It's still in the same spot on your uterus, but because your uterus is getting stretched out, it may start all the way down here and then it may go all the way up to here. So the bottom line was mine had attached very, very low. And it was a 1/2 centimeter away from my cervix. Now the cervix is, you know, the bottom of your uterus, and it's tight until you start going into labor. But that's where the baby comes out. And so there's a lot of shifting and moving that's going to happen when you start dilating and when your uterus starts contracting, getting ready to push the baby out, and sometimes even weeks before you're going to deliver, your uterus will start contracting, like Braxton Hicks and things like that. And there's a lot of movement, and then your cervix will soften and open. This is great. Like, I'm going to get into all the details, so if you don't want to hear this, then don't watch it. But I think moms want to hear all this stuff, so sorry for the graphics. But your cervix will open, and that's you're dilating, you know. So there's a lot of activity that's happening in that area when your baby is going to come out. And if your placenta, which is a very delicate, I think it's an organ, a very delicate organ, almost like picture a water balloon with like tons of capillaries and blood and all sorts of things. This very delicate water balloon stuck right where there's about to be all this action. And you got this bowling ball of a baby barreling through. My placenta was very low, and it attached a 1/2 centimeter away from my cervix. And the bad news about that is it makes it very, very unsafe to have a natural delivery. To have a vaginal delivery, and like I said, all that disruption, it becomes unsafe because something can happen to your placenta. It can tear, and that can lead to hemorrhaging. Anything that happens to the placenta before the baby is born is very bad because the placenta keeps your baby alive. Oxygen, everything comes through your placenta until that baby is out of your body and the umbilical cord is clipped, and they breathe oxygen from the air. That placenta is keeping your baby alive. So if it ruptures or anything happens before the baby comes out, it can be very dangerous or fatal. So you have to protect that. And if your placenta's in the way when you're going to deliver a baby, they won't let you do it. You know, it's just simple. Like, they're not going to take the risk for the mother or the baby, and they schedule you for a C-section. So when I went in for my 20-week appointment, they told me that, and there was very little concern, and she said, you're very small, and what's going to happen over the next 20 weeks is everything's going to grow and expand, and what's going to happen is that placenta, even though it's stuck where it is going to grow away from your cervix. And as long as it's 2 centimeters away, there's a safe, avenue for the baby to come out, and you can go for a natural delivery. And I was like, okay. So they put me on pelvic rest, which means they don't want anything happening to your uterus when your placenta's that close. They don't want you to bleed. Because then you can be put on bed rest. And like I said, dangerous for the baby. So I wasn't allowed to lift things or like work out, jump, or do anything that would cause stress to my body. And I had to go back in for another ultrasound 8 weeks later. And so I was sure in my head that over 8 weeks, I grew, and I was fully anticipating to go in and hear that it had moved out of the way. 2 centimeters is not that much. It's like that much or less. So I was thinking over a 2-month span of time that it would have moved that much, So anyways, I went in for my ultrasound, and it hadn't moved that much. So I was 28 weeks pregnant, and my doctor said to me, well, you still will grow, you still will expand, and there are chances. Let's wait another 4 weeks and we'll reevaluate this. So I was going to go back in at 32 weeks. And by 32 weeks, it was pretty cut and dry whether or not your placenta is going to move out of the way. And if it didn't, then we would schedule a C-section. So I went in at 32 weeks, and it was moving, but it was moving very, very little bit. So I think at 32 weeks, it was like 1.8 centimeters away from my cervix. And I don't want to say the decision was up to me, because I really don't believe it was, but I fell just shy of the gray area as to whether or not you start allowing your body to have a natural delivery and see how it goes, and then you can resort to a C-section if things happen. But then you're in an emergency C-section situation. You're in an emergency situation, basically. So you could start bleeding. Something can happen to the baby, oxygen. If something happens, you go into the C-section. So I was very stressed during this time, because I felt like I was in a gray area where I knew in my gut it wasn't safe to put myself or my baby at risk to say I had a natural delivery, or to just follow through with what I had hoped for. I knew that underlying risk was going to scare me a lot. And I knew there would be fear happening during my labor. I knew that. And my whole philosophy on my labor and delivery was peaceful and happy and joyous, and I didn't want that fear to be there waiting for them to tell me, okay, something just went wrong, now we have to rush you to the OR. So we did one more ultrasound at 36 weeks. Nobody gets this many ultrasounds. I think I had 5. We were watching this like a hawk, and there was parts of my uterus, placenta. Your placenta is pretty big, actually, especially by 36 weeks. It's like really big. There was parts of it that were beyond the 2 centimeters, and there were parts that were not, and they were all the way down as close as 1.5 centimeters, which is not the gray area. 1.5 centimeters is not safe to have a natural delivery. So ultimately around 36 weeks, which felt like the end of my pregnancy. And at that time, your body can start contracting even 3 and 4 weeks before. So we were like, I was waiting to have contractions. I was nervous that my contractions were going to cause a problem. It was a stressful couple of weeks. And so for my last ultrasound, she said, your schedule a C-section is the safest thing to do. We were in agreement, and my husband and I decided that why would we put any sort of risk? There's already so many risks going into childbirth. Why would we not drop the risks and just go in it with everything assuming to be safe, and things could still go wrong. So that's what we did. And like I said, it's not like we really had a choice, although I felt like I made the choice, but I really didn't, because there was no safe way to go into this knowing that it would be okay. You know, it was just, it was the right thing to do. So I would never opt for a C-section over a natural delivery if this was not the case. So that's what we did. We chose, I was technically 39 weeks. And as long as I didn't go into labor before then, we would go in on October 10th, and I would have surgery and he would be born. And it was weird. So we picked, well, we didn't really pick. There was like two options. I could do it Tuesday or Thursday. We picked Thursday because then it was the weekend. I would have the baby on Thursday, and then I would be at the hospital Friday, Saturday, Sunday to Monday. And then my husband could be there, and it wouldn't be during his work week. So we chose the end of the week. So I had to go in for some testing. They like do your blood, they do a blood draw, they take your blood type, and all sorts of other things. I met the anesthesiologist, and I went to the hospital, and I walked around, and that was cool because I did not make time to do a hospital tour. So that was really the only time that I went to the hospital. It was actually a birthing center. It's not, I mean, I guess it's a women's hospital, but it's really considered a birthing center. So I kind of got to navigate a little bit. And let's see, I met my anesthesiologist. She told me about some things, and I was just so excited to meet him. And I put in my mind that this would be my birth story. You know, this would be my story. My baby came at 11:30 on October 10th. Well, he was born at 11:36, but I at first felt like I was being robbed of my chance to perform this miracle of childbirth that I had dreamed about my whole life, of becoming a mother. And I wasn't. This was how it was supposed to happen, and I didn't do anything wrong. So I don't even know why this is making me emotional. This was perfect. It was perfect, and my baby was healthy, and that was important. And so I spent a few weeks wrapping my mind around it, and I wasn't robbed of anything because my experience was amazing. And I'll never forget how great that morning was. And I went and had all my tests a couple days beforehand, and then the morning of, I got up, I took a shower, we packed the car, you know, we let the dogs out. It was a really, really crazy day, and we knew our baby was coming in a couple of hours. So we checked into the hospital, and they took me into a triage room, and I put on a gown, put my hair in a net. My husband put some stuff on, I guess. And they asked me a whole bunch of questions. They got me hooked up on my IV. No exaggeration, getting that IV was the worst part of the whole weekend. That IV hurt. It was a pain in the butt. I don't know, it was just the angle. Like, I hated that IV. Ugh. And it was in my hand, like, the whole weekend. And it even bothered me after. Like, I kept rubbing that vein. Like, I did not like getting that IV. I didn't care about any of the other part of it, but that IV was my least favorite part. So that's the only part of this video I'm gonna be negative about, because I really didn't like the IV. Anyway, she hooked me up to the IV, and Our Lady was really nice, and she asked me a bunch of questions, and I was in triage for like a half hour. And then the nurses came, and they were so awesome. They were happy, and they greeted me, and they put me at ease, and things started to move extremely fast. They put me into a wheelchair, and they wheeled me into the operating room, and they said, we're gonna do your spinal tap, and we're gonna put you in a position, and your baby's gonna be born very fast, and we're gonna wheel your husband in, and the anesthesiologist is gonna be by your head the whole time, and stuff like that. So, and this was like 3 minutes, and I was like, okay. It was just so cool. They were all there to take care of me, and they did such a good job. And nurses are amazing. And I've never been to a hospital ever. I've never had an injury. I've never been taken care of. And these women and people were just like, they were so amazing in taking care of me. And my husband too, because he was very nervous. He didn't want to see anything, and he didn't want to see me cut open. So we kept that all hidden. And so they wheeled me in, and they put me on the operating table. And I know a lot of people are really nervous about the spinal tap. I didn't even feel it. It's nothing. I promise you, it's nothing. The IV was worse. The IV was like irritating. They sat me up. She said, lean forward, look down, and we're gonna put in your spinal, and you're going to feel the numbness right away. One of the things that I was not looking forward to was having my legs be numb. That scared me a little bit, because it's a weird feeling to not be able to control, your body. And I said to myself for weeks, don't try to move. Once they do it, do not try to move, because you'll psych yourself out. So just relax and just let it happen. So that's what I did. They did my spinal tap. I didn't feel anything. I felt nothing. It didn't hurt at all. And then they swung my legs up, but my legs got warm. And I knew when they started to get warm, then I was not going to be able to feel them. So I was like, don't try to readjust your legs. Don't try to readjust your legs. It happened in about 45 seconds. Everything got very numb. And I did try to shift my hips a little bit, and I couldn't. So I was like, okay, don't try to do that, Sarah, and then that was 11:30. So I was laying there. They flipped my legs up. They put up the curtain, and things started happening. And so they made the slice. I didn't even know. I didn't feel anything. My husband was sitting right next to me, and my anesthesiologist was standing behind me. And within about 4 minutes, she said, you're going to feel a little bit of pressure. I don't even really remember what they were saying, because I was just so excited. I was anticipating seeing his face. And so I looked at Mike, and I held his hand, and I said, here he comes. And I just knew it. And so I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel anything. No pain, nothing at all. Just sheer joy of waiting to see his face over that little curtain. And they held him up. He started crying right away. And they held him over the curtain, and they were laughing. He was 8 pounds, 7 ounces. And they were like, oh my God, where did you have that baby? Like, I guess I didn't look that big to them. I felt huge, but 8 pounds, 7 ounces. And as they were holding him over the curtain, Mike and I were crying. It was extremely emotional. It was so exciting. He looked exactly, I knew what he was going to look like. He looked exactly like I thought. And he started peeing on me over the curtain. So Mike's like, he's peeing. And they took him over and they weighed him and did all that little stuff. And I got a crazy head rush. Now, I don't know if that was from the medicine or if it was from my placenta detaching, because from what I learned in my little research was that there's a really crazy hormone surge when the baby is born and when your placenta disattaches from your uterus. And so, yeah, I felt that. And I got a little dizzy. I got a little spinny. So I said to my husband, hold my hand because I'm feeling a little spinny and dizzy. He was like, okay. And then I said, I don't feel good. I don't feel that good. So I told my anesthesiologist, and I think maybe they changed my medicine or something, whatever, my spinal. So then it was kind of a blur. I felt like I drank 2 bottles of wine. That's how I felt. I felt like drunk. Lucid, I knew what was going on, but I felt loopy. So, and they put the baby right on me. I started breastfeeding right on the table. He knew exactly what to do. It was incredible. Mother Nature is incredible. And I told them I wanted to do that beforehand. I told them I wanted to breastfeed, and I told them that I wanted him on top of me right on the operating table. I wanted to latch skin to skin right away. And so they honored that. So he was born, they clipped his cord, they weighed him, they cleaned him up, and they brought him right over to me. Within minutes, they put him right on me. He was breastfeeding. And then they wheeled me out of the operating room and into another triage. And I just could not stop staring at this little baby. I mean, I was holding him. I couldn't even think straight. I couldn't even operate my limbs. It didn't even matter. I felt like I needed help. I was like, somebody just make sure you hold him, because I didn't really feel steady. But we were in triage, and that's when we told my family, my mom, his name. My mom was in triage. That's it. Everybody else was, actually, I don't think anybody else was there, to be honest, because it was 11:30 on a Thursday. But my mom was there, and so she came into triage, and they were telling me everything. We told my mom the name, which we had kept a surprise, and the middle name. And I was looking down at him because I was holding him, so I was getting a little sick. And I told the lady, I'm like, I feel dizzy. I don't feel good. And she said, well, you're looking down, so look forward. And I was like, I can't look forward. I just had a baby. I'm like, I can't stop staring at him. So yeah, they wheeled me up to my room. The wheel up to my room was like wacko. I barely remember. Like I felt drunk. And oh, I was gonna say something else. Oh, I remember the lady saying to me, wiggle your toes. And I looked at her and I was like, I can't. And she's like, you just did. And so it's amazing how fast your numbing starts wearing off, because I couldn't even feel that I was wiggling my toes yet, and she was like, you're doing perfect, they're wiggling, you're great. I couldn't even tell. So they brought me up to the room, and he was with me, and nothing else mattered. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't care. I was fixated on this little baby that just came out of the inside of my body. Insanity. And so we had a great time. I was holding him. My family came to visit. And my loopiness wore off that night about 8 o'clock. It took a very long time. So I just drank a lot of water, and I didn't really remember the nurses' faces. Like I said, it's like I had 2 bottles of wine. So when it started to fade off, I was like, you look familiar. And she was like, yeah. I didn't know their names, but it was pretty funny. And so the first night, my husband stayed till about 10 o'clock at night, and then he came home to let the dogs out and sleep at home, and I was okay. I felt okay. My nurses were so great. I did not sleep. I was afraid to see my incision, and they were like Johnny on the spot. About 11:30 that night, they came in and they were like, we're taking off the dressing. It's gonna heal. You're gonna walk around. And I was like, what? Okay. I didn't even know what was going on here. So they took the dressing off, which was like gauzy. And the incision was bigger than I expected, you know? And now that I'm almost 8 months postpartum, you have to take into account that things shrink and tighten as they heal, and the color fades, you know, because it's pink, it's very raw, fades over time. But to have a small, fair C-section scar takes years. So the initial like reveal, it didn't scare me. I was like, oh wow, that looks good. Did a good job. But it was just longer than I expected. So now that I'm seeing it heal, I realize that a lot of that visible smallness to the scar has a lot to do with just the healing process. So we'll get there, but it looked wonderful. It looked great. I was in shock. And also, for those of you who don't know, you still look pregnant. Your uterus is still stretched out. You got a lot of fluid and random things are displaced. And so you still look like you're 6 months pregnant for a couple of days. And as you breastfeed, your uterus will contract and go back down. And that happens for a couple of weeks. So it really took, oh gosh, it took a couple of weeks for things to start really tightening back down. And I did not feel like I had a flat, normal stomach again for months. And not just like, you know, belly fat or fat that had accumulated over the pregnancy, because you pack on weight, like maternal weight. There was that too, but just the like puffy, you're like puffy, and that takes a little while for your body to go down. And so you get these really snazzy white like mesh underwear and like pads that are like this big, and they're hilarious. They're like a diaper. I mean, it is hilarious. So just make the best of it. It's so ridiculous, but you need it. So anyways, they took my packing off at like 11:30. All my legs and everything felt totally normal. And at that point, you know, my internal narcotics were still like working. So I wasn't really feeling a lot of pain yet, or any pain yet. But I think I started taking Motrin, like 800 milligrams of Motrin every 4 hours or 6 hours. I can't remember, because they alternated with Percocet. And they asked me, do you want Percocet? And I said, no, not yet. I wanted to feel what was going on. I didn't really want to take more medicine than I needed. So I believe I was taking ibuprofen, I think. And then, so that night she said, okay, why don't you get up and go to the bathroom? And I was like, okay. So I did. I walked over to the bathroom very slow, like barely walking. But I mean, it was 12 hours after major surgery. And I mean, you can't sit up or use your ab muscles or anything, but like the bed sits you up, and she helped me stand up, and I just shuffled over to the bathroom, just kind of bent over and just kind of leaving everything, you know, very calm. But it was okay, didn't hurt, and I went pee, and my body was shaking a little bit because of the narcotics wearing off, and your body's in shock a bit. So like my legs were shaking, my hands were shaking a little bit, but that's just all natural. And so then what happened was I came back and I went to bed, and I, like, obviously not sleeping. I had way too much adrenaline. But let's see. My nurse came in about 4 hours later. And she said, have you gone pee? And I said, no, but I have to go pee. And she said, oh, okay. Oh, you have a catheter when you get a C-section. You don't feel it going in because they do your spinal tap and they put in like a larger catheter. So you're completely numb, you don't feel it. And it's under the bed. It's like, you know, your whole body is numb, so you really don't really care what's going on, and you're quite distracted with your baby. But at some point, the catheter has to come out. So like it was about 11:30 p.m. she took the catheter out, and then, like I said, about 4 hours later, she probably came back to give me ibuprofen, and she said, have you gone pee? And I said, no, but I do have to go. And she said, okay. So I went into the bathroom and I couldn't go pee. And so that wasn't super fun because I had to have a catheter. She had to drain my bladder. So whatever, I didn't know what to expect. And I was like, okay. It was the middle of the night. And she manually like put in a catheter. And so that wasn't super comfortable. That was like, no, thank you. So she drained my bladder, and then I thought to myself, I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to drink a ton of water and flush everything and, you know, go pee. Drank a bunch of water, and like 4 or 5 hours later, she came back and she was like, did you go pee? And my bladder was super full. And I'm like, no, but I have to go. So I went to the bathroom again, and I couldn't go. Now, what was happening was the internal narcotics, like the numbing, was still like active. So I couldn't, like, I couldn't control letting myself go, right, until the medicine had worn off. So she had to do it again. So that was kind of a bummer because I had to have another catheter. And that time I knew what to expect. So I was not looking forward to that. And we were laughing so hard because my bladder was so full. And she was like, why? And I said, well, I drank a ton of water. And she said, okay, drink slowly. And if you, at your first inkling to go, then go. Otherwise, my bladder got too full and then I couldn't go. So, I mean, that was really kind of like the worst thing. The most unenjoyable part was I had to have this stinky catheter. Anyway, so, and then the next time I drank water slowly, and I felt a little urge, so I went, and it was totally fine. So that was just kind of like a little trial and error, and let's see, I really felt great. I didn't have any after side effects from the spinal tap or the incision or anything. Normal pain, normal. You know, your body goes through major surgery, you have an incision. And you don't want to like, you can't sit up or laugh or cough, you know, too hard. But it was not bad. So my next phase of nurses said to me, your internal narcotics are going to wear off at 24 hours. So it was like the next day, right? And she said, I just want you to stay ahead of your pain. So if you let them wear off and you're only taking ibuprofen, you may be in a lot of pain. And then I can give you Percocet, but then you're going to have to catch up to it. So in order to stay ahead of the pain, you know, maybe you want to take a dose or a half of a dose and figure out how you feel. My God bless her. Thank God she told me that, because I did take a half of a dose. And like clockwork, when that 24 hours hit and my internal narcotics wore off, wowie, I felt like I had surgery. So I was happy to be on Percocet. I took half the dose. It was like 2 pills. I took 1. And I think it was every 6 hours. I might be reversing the 2, but I took ibuprofen, I took Percocet for that day. That's it. And by the end of that day, well, through the night to the next day. So the next 24 hours, I took Percocet like every 6 hours, the half dose. And we stayed on top of it. And the pain was there, you know, mostly just because of the incision. And then the next day was, going through all the stuff with him and his testing and all that kind of stuff. And I took a shower. I could stand up more straight. I put on a clean robe. It was really nice. And I was really feeling at home. My hospital was amazing. The food was great. It just kept showing up. The nurses taught me how to do everything. My baby had some like acid reflux or some amniotic fluid in his esophagus from the delivery. A lot of times that takes care of itself during a vaginal delivery because of the vacuum effect that the birth has, but because of the C-section that they don't experience that. So a lot of C-section babies will have some amniotic fluid in their throat. And so he just had to like cough it up, and we had to like pat his back. And I could tell right from the start, I couldn't lay him flat on his back because he was like a little choky. So we monitored that, and I learned so much from them. They taught me so much about everything. And my husband would come during the day. He would bring me coffee. We had some visitors. It was just great. I felt so at home there. And I will say this: let them take care of you. Relax. You will have your whole life and upcoming time to go home and figure things out for yourself and recover. Let them change your bed, feed you, shower. You need to get a little, couple hours of sleep. They'll take your baby out in the hall and they'll watch your baby until they need to eat, and then you can relax a little bit. And you need to get some sleep. One of my nurses did that for me the second night. The first night I slept 2 hours, sporadically. The second night she came in and she said, you need to sleep. I know you're very excited that you just had a baby, but you need to sleep. I'm going to take him out in the hallway and you're going to sleep for 2 hours. And then when he cries to eat, I'll bring him back in here. But you need to sleep. And I said, okay. And they know what they're doing, so just let them take care of you. Don't rush to get home. You don't need to rush home. Your body needs to heal, and you need to take it slow. And it's very hard to be home and not want to jump into things. It's very hard to not want to walk the stairs and walk around and try to go to the bathroom by yourself and lifting the baby. Your dogs, your other kids, visitors. All that stuff is going to come. So you need to really let your body heal. Go as slow as you need to. So then, that was it really. It was discharge, and, by the third day, like I said, I was only taking ibuprofen. I came home, and that's all I took for maybe a week or something, just for the pain. Maybe it was less. I don't really remember. But I had a prescription, and I remember taking it. And the sleeping thing is hard because the hospital bed, you can push a button and it sits you up and lays you down, but your bed at home doesn't do that. And you really, even when your baby's in the bassinet, you really have to twist and lift. And I probably should have been a little more patient with myself and taken the time to sit up and then get off the bed and then lean over straight and pick him up with my arms and not try to, do this kind of thing, because it's really not good for your inside. But it's so hard because your baby's crying and you want to, it's hard to just be gentle on yourself. So in retrospect, hindsight, I should have been a little more cautious with leaning and picking him up. He was almost 9 pounds, right? So, but I took the medicine and my incision started to heal, and it was great. So that was my experience. I cried when I left the hospital. The day I was leaving, I cried. I felt very emotional. I felt at home there. I felt like these women took care of me, like they knew me, like they knew my baby, like they knew my family. It was unbelievable. I wasn't scared to bring my son home. I wouldn't know what to do. I just the reality set in that I had to go out into the world with this baby. And it's like you're in this little cocoon in your hospital room, and they take care of you and feed you and make sure that you're clean and healthy, and they're monitoring your vitals and your medicines and your baby. And it's just like, oh, thank God for them. They teach you so much. And then you just have to go on your own instinct. So it's like, soak that up. Let them do it. It's their job. They do a really good job. Oh man, I can't wait to have another baby and go back, and I want to like really see them. It's like say hey. You don't even realize when it's happening at the time, because there's so much that's overwhelming. But really, don't take your nurses for granted. I mean, they're phenomenal, and doctors. So it was a wonderful experience, and there's nothing else that I have to share. You know, I hope that it takes a little of your anxiety away, and don't read horror stories. Don't go looking for fear and anxiety, and just tell yourself through the whole process that you're going to be okay. Your baby's going to be okay. You can handle anything. Your body was made to do this, whether it was through surgery, through natural childbirth, whatever you choose, wherever you choose, you were made to do this. So you're going to be okay. And any little hiccups that you hit along the way, you just accept. This is what's happening. It's going to be okay, you know? And what else was I going out? I feel like I was going to make another point, but I can't really remember. Yeah, that's really it. I think for moms who are planning a natural childbirth, and even go into the hospital, right? And start your labor, start delivery, whatever. Something happens with the baby, something happens with the mom, whatever happens. And you have to go into a C-section. It's really important to be informed, because never be the mom that says, that's not gonna happen to me. Never be that mom, because then you're not prepared. You're not prepared with knowledge, you're not prepared emotionally, nothing. And the best way to do anything is to be prepared. So prepare yourself for what could happen. And that way, if it happens, you're ready and you're calm. And I hope you never end up in an emergency situation. I hope that everything goes smoothly and you can make decisions rationally, and for the safety of you and your baby, everything goes well. But those decisions are best made when you are informed. So don't be naive and think that nothing can happen to you or your baby. And there's going to be a positive spin on every experience. So just learn. And that's my story. That's what you can expect for things to go. It's just like, I had my baby through surgery, and I recovered from the surgery. And that was it. So it took me a long time before I really felt comfortable, like sitting up and down, coughing or laughing. Even now when I sneeze, sometimes I feel a little pull, and it's going on 8 months, but major surgery, major. This is like, you got to know what's happening to your body. And exercising, I was very, very cautious about exercising, or even just movement, just movement, driving, getting in and out of the car. You have to be very careful when you're driving, because if you were to like slam on the brake or slam on the gas and tear an incision, that, anytime that can happen, or anytime that you're going to, what's the word? Like, not react in the timely way you're supposed to, then could cause an accident. You shouldn't be driving. So, you got to be cautious. So I didn't drive for 5 weeks. I think I was probably ready around 4, but I was cautious. I waited to make sure that everything was really healing up inside before I drove. And anyway, so that's my story. I'll wrap it up. Good luck to you. And if you have questions, comment below. I'll be happy to answer them. And just remember, it's a special time. So however your baby is born is how they were supposed to be born. And I will see you in my next video. Thanks.